as you know, in the teachings, when unexpected things happen suddenly, if you're able to maintain the practice, that's good. You know, that's the test, the exam. You know, so something to be a good practitioner when it's sunshine and everybody loves you and everything's fine. That's easy. Everybody can do that. Right? But when when things unexpected happen, you know, it's quite interesting. When I took the train coming up here, peacefully doing my thing. And then I noticed my suitcase was open because there's a way to close so you have a latch a little bit bigger. So somehow I opened it, and so the bottom of my suitcase was actually open, you know. And I was, moving towards the train, and I noticed, so I had to close, you know. So while I was, and the train was there, so I was rushing to go. At that time, a guy came to beg me some money. So, you're in a rush to do that, and you rush to take the train, and at that moment, this guy comes to give money. So you checked, because the tendency is, to look, I don't have time, it's kind of like that. So it was quite interesting. This situation where suddenly you off balance, and then you check your mind there. So life gives you a lot of opportunity like that. Suddenly you're off guard, and then you check how you control your mind then. So I didn't pass that exam. I said, not now,
You probably didn't have the karma for it either.
Well, I think, I don't think he was a real beggar, just yeah.
Maybe also the beggar wasn't very clever, because that happened to me at one time in Bern, but I still have to stamp the ticket. So he comes and he was like late at night when there's only a train bus every half hour. So I said, sorry, I don't have time, I have to stamp the ticket. He said, okay, you give me the ticket, I go stamp the ticket, then you have time to take that.
So, in this regard, in the West now, mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness has become quite popular, right? So to be mindful moment by moment, but what you're doing. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he often makes a little bit joke about it, in the sense that it says, you see, being mindful is good, but it's not virtuous. It simply makes you aware of what you're doing moment by moment. So by itself, it's not, I mean, he used the example, a thief has to be very mindful, not to get caught, right? And I think in many sport or many profession, you need quite a strong mindfulness to do your job properly. Let's say you climb a mountain, so if you're not really concentrated, mindful of what you're doing, you sleep, right? So mindfulness, the way we do it, not in a spiritual context, basically, I think it's Kabat-Zinn that started that as a stress reduction method, right? So he took that out of the Vipassana tradition and then brought it. I think it's helpful for people which have cancer or people which have very stressful, difficult life, and then they watch the breath and they're detached from the involvement of their life, so to get some peace, some distance from what they're doing. So I think it's helped. In Spain, actually, they teach that to the nurse and the doctor in their training, and then they teach that in the hospital to the patient. And I think in many fields now, there's coaching, in different professions, different type of coaching, and in the coaching method, one practices the, training mindfulness. So in Buddhism, in the Pali tradition, is this practice called the four foundation of mindfulness, right? So, but there, mindfulness, for example, mindfulness of the body, to be mindful of the body, actually, is not just mindfulness of the body. Is mindfulness of the body's impermanence, right? And then, because it's impermanent, you notice its unsatisfactory nature. Right? And then the third stage is that this body doesn't, there's no me in the body. Right? So selflessness. And then the fourth is emptiness. Right? So, and then you do the same thing with sensation or feeling. Right? So the sensation, they're impermanent. So the whole life we look after pleasurable sensation, and we get attached to them and we want to repeat them. This clinging and grasping pleasurable sensation. But they are impermanent. So once you realize that they are impermanent by nature, you realize that they are unsatisfactory. They cannot give you permanent happiness because their nature is impermanent, is fleeting, right? And then where is this self, that enjoys these pleasurable sensations? Where you go into selflessness. And then emptiness. So same thing then with mind and mental event and all phenomena. So this is a little bit in the direction of Satipatthana, in Theravada tradition. And basically the aim, is to get to realize renunciation or non-attachment, and then selflessness, right? So it leads you to liberation from cyclic existence. So that's the purpose. So mindfulness is actually a method in that tradition to lead you to liberation. Right? So it's, how to say, it's practice in that context to lead you to liberation from your mental affliction, from recurring uncontrolled rebirth. So actually, you see, the practice is goal-oriented. The aim is to reach liberation, right? And is a method to lead you to that. So now when we practice mindfulness, in everyday life, as a stress reduction, so the aim there is to have a little bit less suffering with what you experience, So it's not aimed to reach liberation, it's aimed, to better cope with what's happening, the stress in your job or the stress with your family situation or the stress with your sickness. So in Mahayana, mindfulness is again something different, So normally in Mahayana, the practice of mindfulness is to always cherish other above yourself, right? So you have this practice of giving and taking, put on the movement of the breath. Because in Mahayana, the goal is not so much to reach liberation only, it's to bring all beings to liberation. So the motivation is different, and therefore the practice is, the emphasis is, even though you also develop ethic, concentration, and the wisdom become free, but the priority is more the accent or the emphasis is more put on developing love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So in that context, I will read you a few verses from Shantideva, his take on mindfulness, right? So there's a chapter in this book from Shantideva, which is called the chapter on mindfulness, and it's the 5th chapter. And those who have the book is on page 27. Without guarding the mind attentively, guarding one's practice is impossible. Even a crazed elephant can't cause as much harm as an untamed mind. But for a mind bound by mindfulness, everything becomes possible. Wild animals, spirits, enemy, all will be tamed by having tamed this mind. All the suffering there is, up to the worst suffering of the hell, originates from the untamed mind. Nothing is more dangerous. As poverty still exists, how is giving perfected? Through a mind with the sheer wish to give everything. Animals are still being killed, but the mind that gives up such act is considered ethically perfect. Enemies are too numerous to destroy, but abandoning anger achieves the same purpose. I cannot cover the planet with leather, but I can cover my feet. Likewise, I'm unable to control external events. But if I tame my mind, what else needs to be controlled? Speech and action don't achieve the result achieved by a subdued mind. Prayers and meditation are futile if practiced with a distracted mind. Thus, those who seek happiness without understanding the mind work in vain. Therefore, I must tame my mind. Without this, what use are many other trainings? Living amid difficult people, like a wounded one, I should protect my mind. For if I protect a common wound, why not protect a wounded mind for fear of hell? If I always remain so diligent, then neither attractive nor harmful people will unsettle my mind. Though my fame, fortune, and other virtues fade, never will I let my mind degenerate. O you who wish to guard your mind, I pray that you always be mindful and introspective. Like a sick man, drained of strength, the scattered mind accomplish little. And like a leak in a jar, lack of introspection prevents what has been heard, pondered, and meditated upon from being retained in memory. Many otherwise devoted and learned commit downfalls from lack of mindfulness. To steal our merit and send us to the lower realms, the seeds of distractions and delusion lie in wait for a breach in mindfulness. I will practice mindfulness at all times, and if momentarily lost, recall it by recalling the help. Surrounded by masters, practicing with respect, mindfulness develops easily. Buddha sees everything, including me. So with respect, I should remember their presence. So actually, this is a very good advice. You know, in daily life, there was a movie, I don't know whether you sort of, What Would Jesus Do? Have you heard of that movie? What Jesus would do? So the bunch of people, you know, and they would always think, what would Jesus do in, there was a Christian. So what would Jesus do in that situation? You know? So here is this practice of, you know, you basically you recollect the Buddha, and in Vajrayana you recollect your guru. You know, so in whatever situation you think of the presence of a guru, what he would do. You know, in that situation, or you have a decision to take, you think, what would the Buddha do? What would the guru do? And actually, you leave, if you familiarize yourself with that, it's like what's happening is that you always invoke your higher self, you know, the best part of yourself. So, how to explain that? Because it's not like the guru or the Buddha will whisper you to do, you know, you do this, do that. No, it doesn't work like that. But by thinking of that, so you high aspiration, you know, sometimes we are low and we are selfish and blah, blah, blah. And some, you know, so we go to different states of mind in the same day, right? Sometimes we follow delusion, sometimes follow love and compassion, sometimes, you know, we are aware of emptiness and so forth. Huh? Can I go? Thank you. So, you know, sometimes we follow our delusion, or we're naughty, you know, and we think nobody knows, because, you know. But the Buddhas are always aware of you, you know? So you can never hide. You know? And we think we can hide with we close the curtain, you know. Oh, you know, I'm alone, you know. But no, not like that. So it's good to remember that. I found that very effective as a method. And actually, I spend, you know, many months a year in the retreat alone. And so physically I'm alone. I don't see anybody. But I never feel alone. You know, I always feel in the presence of the enlightened being. You know, my teacher, the merit field, you know, all the Buddhas, Bodhisattva, Dhaka, Datini. So actually, it's very crowded in my solitary retreat space. So people are sometimes, then you never feel alone. No, not at all. when introspection is set to guard the mind, mindfulness will come, and even when lost, be regained. First, I should check my mind, and if a delusion is present, refrain from action. I will not let my gaze wander aimlessly, but would always look down as in meditation. However, to rest for a while, I may look around and greet those I see. Walking, I may sometimes stop and check around me for any danger, and then proceed accordingly. So you can see many contexts are dealing, wild animal and things like that. So it's in the context of 8th century India, where you were walking around and there were tiger and elephant and wild animals, So, you have to be on your guard, on these things. So we don't have many tigers and elephants down Zurich Street, right? But still, you have to be guard for thieves or whatnot, right? Or cars and people walking with their cell phone, or now these how you call scooter, and like that. So we have our modern elephant and tiger. If I decide my body should act like this, I should periodically check to see if it does so. Likewise, I should watch my mind to ensure it remains bound to the pillar of Dharma. In this way, I will never, even for an instant, let go of the investigation of my mind's movement. But if I'm unable, when in danger or celebration, I will let it do what's appropriate. Having begun something, I will think of nothing else until it is accomplished. In this way, all is done well, else nothing is achieved and I become confused. All interest in gossip and entertainment, on which too much time is spent, as well as any meaningless action, I should abandon. Before performing any actions of body and speech, I should first check my mind. If I find attraction or aversion, if I'm under the power of arrogance, pride, or jealousy, if it pursues material gain, honor, or praise, or seek my interest over others, if I'm timid or impudent, impatient or lazy, in any of these cases, I will be like a log. A log is a piece of wood, right? So basically, when you're, under the control of this delusion, what he says, you don't act. You don't engage in whatever you were planning to do because you're influenced by mental affliction. And then whatever you will do will be negative karma for yourself and you might harm others. So he said, in those state, in those times, you don't act, you wait. Whenever my mind is disturbed in this way, I will apply the antidotes. Right? So whatever, if it's anger, practice patience. If it's, desires, attachment, you meditate on the drawbacks of that, etc. Determined, kind-hearted, stable, respectful, mindful of karma, available to help, never disheartened by the contradictory wishes of childing being, but always compassionate towards their affliction, and understanding that ego, like an illusion, has no reality. Thus, I will make my mind like a mountain, constantly reflecting on the great opportunity of the precious human life at last attained. So, yeah, so this is the practice of mindfulness. O mind, I will master my mind, smiling, a true friend to the world, considerate of others. I jumped. Verse 72, those which follow the text. Considerate of others, I will delight in being quiet, like cats and thieves that accomplish their aim by being discreet. Respectful, I will pay attention to the skilled advice of others and give encouragement and praise for good things done. I will speak of others' good qualities when they are out of sight. And when my own are mentioned, think of them with appreciation. Let me rejoice in others' good actions and happiness. For in this life, I won't lose anything, and in future one, I will gain great happiness. Let me speak from the heart, just enough, in a clear and pleasing way. When I see beings, may I think, depending on them, I shall reach Buddhahood. May I build up my character by my virtuous aim, through applying the antidote and through being helpful to others. And in performing any of my actions, I will rely on no one but myself. I will train in the perfections gradually, the later ones being more exalted. I will not discard a greater perfection for a smaller one, and I will always consider the benefit of others. Having realized this well, let me work for others with constant energy. Eating simply, let me share my food with the ordained and beggar, and be ready to sacrifice all but my robes. So he speaks to monks and nuns. This body is for the Dharma. Let me handle it with care. Let me use it for the highest aim and not give it away until my compassion is pure. '91. Let me be considerate of others' property, eat with good manners, and not sit with stretched leg or crossed arm. So this is Indian culture thing. I will always abandon what's offensive to others. I won't point with my fingers, but indicate the way with my whole hand. Nor widely wave my arms or shout out loud, unless in urgency. Or else I will lose control. I will sleep in the lion pose and with alertness resolve to rise early. Practice are countless, but these that cleanse the mind are the most important. 6 times a day, I will recite the Three-Hip Sutra and thus neutralize my downfall. So at the beginning of the spiritual path, actually the most important practice is to purify one's mind. You see, of all the garbage that is in there, all the negative, you see, if you have a lot of negative imprint in your mind, so a lot of obstacles come all the time. You know? So, you know, you have relationship problem, you have work problem, you have money problem, and all these problems is the wrapping of karma, right? So you might try to change the situation outside. You know, you always try to fix the world around you, but if you don't fix your mind, if you don't go to the root cause of all this karma, then the situation won't really change. So take care of one's karma is really important. And here the Three-Hip Sutra actually is, we call it now the prostration to the 35 Buddhas. So this Three-Hip Sutra, you know, has 3 parts. So that's why it's called the Three-Hip Sutra. You know, you have the hip of reciting the names of the Buddhas. So these Buddhas, each one, you see, when you reach enlightenment, there's an extra merit that you didn't use up to reach enlightenment. And that merit, these Buddhas, they dedicate, they offer for different purpose. So whoever recites my name, you know, these many millions karma of lying will be purified. Whoever recites my name, you know, all these eons of killing will be purified. So whoever recites my name, so by the power of the Buddha, blessing their name, so all these actions arise. So it's actually not through your own power, it's through the power of the extra merit. So the Buddha offered you his merit, so to whoever recites their name. So there's a practice of reciting the name of 35 Buddha, and each one has incredible, you know, purification like that. There's a text by Lama Zopa that Lama Zopa Rinpoche translated, is a long version of the 35 Buddha, and there it says in the verses what that Buddha purifies, you know, and why. So this is actually it's available on the FPMT store, you know, where is all these texts. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught it a few times. So it's good sometimes to read the benefit, you know, for those which do the 35 Buddha, sometimes to read the benefit of reciting each name, because it really gives you enthusiasm and joy in doing that practice. So Shantideva, he advised to do that 6 times a day. So usually we recite the name 3 times each. So if you do that 2 times, it makes 6, right? Because you recite each name 3 times, right? So it makes 6. So there's some, you know, for example, His Holiness Dalai Lama, every morning at 4 o'clock, he does prostration 35 Buddha. You know, you can go on YouTube and you can see, you know, there's a YouTube of someone recording the Dalai Lama doing his morning practice. You know? So the first thing he goes, you know, stop, wash his face, and then just prostration 35 Buddha, then he takes a shower. You know, that's his morning thing. So I think 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning is 35 Buddha prostration. And that video was, I think he was maybe 80 years old or 75 years old. That's, wow, you know, even at that age, you know, the Dalai Lama, you know, maybe a Buddha, you know, and he does prostration. So, and I'm lazy and think, oh, you know, maybe I don't need to do prostration. So, wow, Dalai Lama does. If he sees benefit for his mind, you know, there might be some benefit for mine too. And I went to visit one of my teachers, Kenzo Rinpoche Losang Jampa, maybe 10 years ago in California. I went into, and he's also maybe 80 years old at that time, 78, 80 years old. And I enter in his room and I see the prostration board, and he speaks Tibetan. So I went through the translator. I didn't speak with him, ask. But then when I went out, I asked to Tashi, his translator and attendant, oh, Kansu Rinpoche has prostration board. Does he do prostration every morning? And he says, no, he's doing 100,000 prostration. And he was, in his late 70s or 80s, and he's Kenzo Rinpoche, he's an ex-tabot from the Tantric College, so he can give all the initiation, all this, he's a gay, he's a highly realized master, and yet he's doing 100,000 prostration, So for me, it's very inspiring because, wow, I'm so lazy. So reminding these things, I said, wow, maybe, And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, even after his stroke, he was paralyzed on one side, one leg and one arm, not completely paralyzed, but yeah, difficult. So he would do a prostration. He would take you 2-3 minutes to do one prostration. So we were waiting there, until he finished. But no matter what, no matter how hard it was, sometimes even Pisatan had to help him to stand up after prostration. But he would do it. And again, that was very inspiring to say, wow, if he sees benefit for his mind to do prostration, wow, so I should too. So for me, because I'm very lazy, so if I don't remember these things, I just jump and I just sit on the cushion. I don't do prostration. But if I remember Lama Zopa Rinpoche, doing prostration, if I remember His Holiness Dalai Lama doing prostration, if I remember Khenzo Rinpoche, these old lamas that continue to do prostration, they are older than me, and wow. So this really encourages me and gives me the energy to do prostration. And now, myself, I memorized it once in Tibetan. I did 100,000 prostration in Bodh Gaya. I think I was 23 or 24 when I was young. Hello. And so I did it in those days, we did it in Tibetan, And then there was a first translation by Sangye Kadro, American nun. So she translated it quite nicely. So I memorized that. And then I used to, for many years, recite that one. And then the FPMT made a new version, And because I lead retreats here and there, so I had to do the latest version of the FPMT. So I led that one, but I read it, And after a while, I didn't know any version anymore by heart. So now, actually, I recorded the latest version on my phone, and then I just put my phone on with loudspeaker and I do prostration at the same, and I recite the names at the same time as the recording. So I don't bother, I don't bother memorizing it anymore because I'm completely confused with different versions in my mind. Practice is very easy, now with modern phones, you can record whatever prayer, whatever meditation, So, for example, the Lama Chopa, certain practice. So if I travel with the car, I put it on the loudspeaker in the car, and I do the practice at the same time. Like that. So this practice of prostration 35 Buddha, we call it prostration, but you see, sometimes the benefit comes from reciting the names. So yes, there's more benefit if you at the same time do prostration, but merely reciting the name is already fantastic, you know. So you put the hand in prayer and you recite the name. So here, Shantideva actually doesn't say to do prostration. He says to recite the sutra of the three heaps. Let me diligently apply the training appropriate for each situation. Since for a skilled bodhisattva, each moment is transformed into virtue. I will do all actions for others' benefit and dedicate them towards enlightenment. I will never, even at the cost of my life, give up a guru skilled in the Mahayana. Relating respectfully to a guru can be understood from reading the sutras and the Bodhisattva's trainings from the sutras and Nagarjuna's texts. Let me implement fully these trainings to protect this worldly mind. Mindfulness in brief is this: repeatedly checking the state of body and mind. I will put all these into practice. For what benefit is there in merely reading the doctor's prescription? So if you check what the essence is, right? To be mindful of the actions we do, mindful of the mental afflictions and applying the antidote, and mindfulness of love and compassion and cherishing others and working for their benefit. So the simplest object or the easiest object to develop a calm mind is to watch the breath. So the breath is not like the Buddha or the nature of the mind or emptiness. Those objects are a little bit difficult to find. They are subtle phenomena. Whereas the breath is always there. There's something, there's a physical sensation. So it's always there. It's not difficult to find. And there's some movement there, some gentle movement of the lungs, filling and emptying. So it's soothing movement, like a wave dying on the shore and retracting. So if you put your attention on the movement of the breath, and you focus only on that, even though there might be thought, different things happening in your mind, you ignore these things and just focus on the movement of the breath. And gradually, as you don't feed the thought, you don't pay attention to them, they become fainter and fainter till you're not aware of them anymore. You're just aware of the movement of the breath. So while you continue this meditation, watching the breath, see if you can subliminally remember, like I want to be happy, all beings want to be happy. And then with the out breath, out of love, you send light rays of love that transform into whatever beings wishes. Or just send out love, wishing well to everyone. Then instead of focusing on the out breath, you focus more on the in breath, and you imagine out of compassion, you take away other people's problems, their pain, their depression, their mental affliction. Sometimes you focus more on giving with love, and sometimes you focus more on taking with compassion. 10 minutes break. Um, so where that leads us, you see, is in this practice of lojong or mind training. So there's a how to train the mind in developing love and compassion. You know, how to train that in everyday life. And so there's many texts on mind training that have been composed over the centuries by different yogis. You know, and the most common, the eighth verse of mind training, right? And you know, the 7-point mind training. So these are the most common now that we know, but there are many, many, many others. And there is a beautiful book called Mind Training. Very original title. Actually, it's a collection of mind training texts from ancient Tibet that has been translated by Tutan Jinpa. So you have a pocket edition and you have the big edition. So there's a collection of maybe 40, 50 mind training texts. And there's one by Maitri Yogi that I like very much. So as a conclusion for this session on bodhicitta, I would like to read that text and we meditate on, you know. So this Maitri Yogi wrote that text for himself, you know, as a training, in order to train his mind. So he composed that text and he made a tune to it and chanted every day. You know, he chanted that to inspire his mind in mind training. So I hope someone will make a tune for it so that we can chant it together in an inspiring way someday. So to guide all beings who have been my parents, so here you see it connects to that feeling that all beings have been my mother, my father. You know, all beings have been very precious to me. You know, they've given me so much. You know, so they've given me this body. You know, taking care of me when I was a small baby. You know, completely dependent on them. So all being, why all beings? Because we had infinite lives. So all beings have been, at some point, our dear parents, our kind parents. So for someone which has meditated quite effectively on the kindness of the mother, or the kindness of the father, here you use the term parent. So merely seeing that word parents or mother, it's very, how to say, brings about a lot of emotion of how, of having received so much love, so much care. So that word becomes very potent in the meditation. Whereas if you haven't meditated a lot on the kindness of the mother, the kindness of the parent, so then you say, well, what's the big deal? But if one has meditated on it, then it becomes very rich, very profound. To guide all beings who have been my parents, I will extract without exception the 5 poisons of each being. So the 5 poisons, you see, ignorance, desire, attachment, anger, pride, and jealousy. So you imagine, you see, as you inhale, you take away these 5 poisons from the mind of all living beings, which have been your dear parents. And he says here, by means of the 5 poisonous afflictions present in me. You see, when you're angry, instead of just being angry, you imagine taking away the anger of other people onto your anger. When you're obsession, desire, obsession, when you're afflicted by that negative emotion of desire, so you imagine taking away that very same poison in the mind of other people onto your own poison. Or when you're jealous and you see how painful it is to be jealous, you say, by my being jealous, may nobody being other has to suffer from jealousy, and you take their jealousy onto your jealousy. When you're proud, you imagine taking the pride away of all other beings onto your pride. So of course we cannot do that when it's actually happening. So in meditation, you bring up those negative emotions in you, and then you imagine taking you, because then you can feel how it is, how uncomfortable it is to be proud. Then you take the pride away from others. So this is very beautiful. To guide all beings who have been my parent, I will extract without exception the 5 poisons of each being, by means of the 5 poisonous afflictions present in me. Because you see, we think we are different than others, but if you bring forth in you this negative emotion, that you can feel how they feel, how unpleasant it is. So there's a link, you feel connected with others. And then you imagine taking away their mental affliction onto you, created mental affliction. Whatever virtue I may possess, such as an absence of attachment, I will distribute equally to all beings of the six realms. So whatever virtue state of mind you have, you distribute equally to all beings. When you have a loving mind, wishing being to happy, you offer that loving mind to others so that other beings also experience a loving mind. And when your mind is free from desire, so you focus on this mind of contentment, and then you offer this mind of contentment to all beings so that they may also experience the mind of contentment. So this verse focuses on the mental affliction. Then the next verse focuses on karma, the ripening of karma, the suffering. Using the painful fruit of my karma, such as sickness and so on. You see, whatever suffering, falling out of love, losing job, having to squabble with people, all this is the ripening of our own karma. We often blame or attribute the cause of our problems to the outside world, to people, to the situation. But the root cause comes from the ripening of our own misdeeds of the past. So it says in the teaching, you see even a cool breeze of fresh air when it's very hot. That cool breeze is the ripening of our good karma. So there's no pleasure or pain that we experience. That is not the ripening of karma. So nothing happens by chance or random, and is not created by an outer being that sends us this experience. It's just the ripening of things we planted in our own mind in the past. So often you hear in the world people say, why me? Why do I have to be sick? Other people are not sick. Why did I break my leg? Why me? Why am I poor and others are rich? Why are they intelligent, smart, and I'm not? In Buddhism, all this is a ripening of karma. So to take care of one's karma is really, really important if you wish to be happy. So here, Maitripa says, using the painful fruit of my karma, such as sickness and so on, I will extract all similar suffering of sentient beings. You see, whenever you have pain, instead of feeling miserable about your pain, you use that experience, to increase your love and compassion and your bodhicitta. So whenever you have pain, you imagine taking the similar pain of others onto your pain. So, because you know how it feels to have pain when you have pain. So you have natural compassion for other people which have the same experience. And so you imagine out of compassion taking their pain away onto your pain. Whatever joy and benefit I may possess, such as an absence of illness, I will distribute equally to all beings in the six realms. Your good health, your wealth, your knowledge, your intelligence, your kind-heartedness, your youth, whatever you possess, as qualities. So all these you offer freely to all beings. You share with others mentally. If I do this, what occasion is there for me, even for a single instant, to wander aimlessly in this ocean of cyclic existence? You see, if one would be able to practice like that, have that mindfulness, then everything becomes path to enlightenment. Every single moment, you create a huge amount of virtue. You really become a bodhisattva, and you are on the path to enlightenment. Yet, until I have attained full enlightenment, whatever class of the five poisons and their fruit may lie in store, I will exhaust entirely in this very life. So whatever anger, pride, jealousy, and so forth, whatever negative emotion I still possess in my mind, I will purify, I will clean, I will finish in my mind so that they never arise again. And their fruit, the negative karma that I experience, the suffering, the problems, all this I will finish by purifying this karma. If I do this, what occasion is there for me, even for a single instant, to wander aimlessly in this ocean of cyclic existence? Yet, until I attain full enlightenment, whatever class of the five poisons and their fruit may lie in store, I will exhaust entirely in this very lifetime. I will extract them in this very year and in this very month. I will exhaust them in this very day and in this very instant. I will seek the means to cut even the thread of minor suffering. O mighty yogi, make sure that your mind becomes trained. So this practice is really effective. You see, for example, you want to meditate and your mind is distracted, you're restless. And then the mind becomes unhappy because you're restless, you cannot meditate. So instead of going into that self-pity mode, you use your distraction. See, that by myself experiencing this problem of being distracted, may nobody else has that problem. May I take all the agitation and distraction of other upon me. So it brings you out of your low self-esteem, out of your depression, out of your unhappy mind, being unhappy of having distraction. Actually, then you don't mind being distracted. But by myself being distracted, may nobody else be distracted. May I take all the distraction from me. So instead of being in your narrow little self-pity bubble, you expand your mind and you connect with all living beings and you imagine taking away their problems. So suddenly the space opens up and you make use of your problem, to clean your mind and to create so much virtues with thought that definitely will bring happiness in the future. So this is just a small example of when you're distracted, when you have pain, when you fall out of love, when you have job problems, whatever problems you have, you can use it instead of feeling miserable about it. And then whatever goodness you have, mentally you share with others. You go in a beautiful park and you see beautiful flowers. May all beings enjoy beautiful flowers. May all beings enjoy beautiful parks. So this mind training is really effective, to bring peace and joy in your heart. So it's good from time to time, to read mind training texts like that. So can be just a single verse or that speaks to you. And then reflect on it and meditate like that. All right. I think that's the end of this mind training bodhicitta class. We could, spend 3 months on it, and we wouldn't exhaust the topic. So I think just give you a hint, what's possible.